Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and transition to our top 10 scenes of 2025. It is that time. We are close to the InSession Film Awards. As we noted up at the top of this, one of our favorite conversations that we have each and every year. This time we are breaking this into two parts, as I noted up at the top as well. This will be our 10 through 6 picks. We'll do the top 5 next week on the show. Did you have any criteria? We normally don't have too much criteria here.
Normally we don't. I feel like I sort of have a little bit of criteria every single time. It's just not the hardest of criteria as it is for other top 5s that we do for other shows. But I will say, I am trying my best not to pick only final scenes from movies, because this really could be our top 10.
Like, of all
scene.
the years, especially, this is a year where you could do that. Like, of all the years.
And that's really the point I'm trying to make. So there are a few here where I am picking the final scene from a specific movie, and that's only because I had no other choice not to.
That's I see what you're doing there. There's a little teaser there. I see.
Okay. Teaser. We just reviewed that movie, so go and listen to that one. I need to give that one a revisit. So sadly, that one might not pop up in my top 10. But for the most part, I am trying to only pick final scenes from movies if that was really my only option and it made the most sense to do that. And I'm also relegating this to 10 individual movies, that so not just 10 scenes, but also one scene per movie, if that makes sense, which we normally do. There are at least a few movies here where I probably could pick at least 2 or 3 scenes that would be eligible to be among my favorite scenes of the year in a solid top 10, but I want to spread that wealth like I always try to do. So that's my only other criteria here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you in the sense that I found a lot of ending scenes that could have and probably should make this list. It truly was a legendary year as far as endings go, closing scenes, just all-time year from that perspective. I do have a few here for sure that we'll get to either this week or next week. Really, my only criteria, though, for this list, as it always is, as you just pointed out, I limited myself one film per pick. I did not pick 2 scenes from a single film.
Yeah.
So I have 10 different movies that I will highlight here. And that tends to be the biggest criteria.
We tend to do that all the time. We do that every time. And I think that's best. We see so many movies. Let's spread the wealth.
Exactly. Okay. With that said, let's jump into this. Our top 10 scenes of the year. Number 10, Brendan, what do you got?
So the one I have as my number 10, I have it as my number 10 primarily because it's kind of a scene, but I'm mostly picking it at my number 10 because of a very particular shot. If anything, it might be my favorite shot of the year. And because of how much it affected me, it might actually be higher on this list, but the limited nature of it is why I only have it at number 10. For my number 10, I'm going to go with The Secret Agent. And I'm actually going to go with the split diopter shot that takes place at the record scene when this one hitman is after Marcelo, and he has to essentially play dumb when he hears his name being called, that, no, I am not this individual. This is right around the point where the film is beginning to briefly transition into the type of political thriller you might have expected it to be. But I do think that this setup, the way it introduces that genre, is still very unconventional because it introduces it in a way that's very antithetical to what we normally see as violence in a crime movie, right?
Sure.
Instead, it is communicated to us through words, through the calling out of one's name, the anticipation of a gun being drawn, only for it to then be put right back. And I think the silence of it made it, I want to call it one of the most thrilling sequences of the entire year. But I think the best way I can describe it is that it was probably the moment of any film from this year where it actually did take my breath away. That is something I rarely say because I feel like you could say that a lot about certain things that you like in movies that it quote unquote took your breath away. But this one literally quite did. I was glued to the screen when that moment happened, and I couldn't breathe. I was stressed out of my mind in a way that the movie is clearly asking you to feel,
Mm.
and I thought the filmmaking there was just so exquisite that I couldn't leave just this simple shot off this list. But I think the scene itself, the entire record scene that it's confined within is still very effective. The cinematographer here, I wanna highlight his name even though I know I'm not gonna be able to pronounce it. It's, Evgenia Alexandrova. I probably butchered that so badly. I think we tried to say his name during the actual review of this movie, and we butchered it
Sure.
there as well. But credit where credit is due because the way that that shot is formulated to highlight the quietness of that tension, I think is just
Mm.
so exquisite, and I wanted to talk about that here.
Man, if we're gonna do our favorite shots of the year, I'm gonna need at least a top 50. At
Mhm,
least a top 50 if we're doing best shots of the year. And I do agree, this is a great sequence. Then that is a great shot and great use of the camera. I love this film as well. I don't know if I have anything else to add. I think you articulated it perfectly why it's so thrilling and incredible for that moment. Wagner Moura is extraordinary in his performance, and I do love how the film
mhm.
captures that moment of being found out.
Yeah, and
That,
yeah, and you could tell sorry to cut you off, but you can
uh,
tell, and this is what makes Wagner Moura's performance so great. He is desperately trying not to react, and you
yes,
could sense he is trying to
yes,
hide it, and that's a hard thing to do.
and
He could
maybe failing, maybe
Yeah, like,
failing.
but it's
Yeah,
it it there are very minor subtleties in the way that he doesn't react that almost look like it could have been a giveaway.
yeah.
That's brilliant acting right there.
It's perfect. It's absolutely incredible because yeah, you do see Marcelo crumble in the moment a little bit and
Mhm,
struggle with what to do next. How am I going to get out of this situation?
mhm,
And of course, given where the film goes, there is a tragic irony to it all. But I do think a lot of the what we see at the end of the film, the coda, it begins with this moment, and it is
mhm.
quite thrilling. Really,
Yeah,
really good stuff. Yeah.
this is basically the moment that kicks off the entire final sequence that then leads to what makes it one of the best endings of the year. I could have talked about the ending as one of the best scenes of the year, but I have so many other
Mhm.
endings I wanna get to. I needed something
Yeah.
else to add some variety here.
Yeah. No, I agree. That is a great moment. And I do love the ending to this film as well. Both of those are great honorable mentions for me. All right. My number 10. This was a little bit of a last minute shift. I actually had a different scene here in place until earlier this evening as we are recording
Hmm,
this because
interesting.
something came to mind. Circling back to what I said about our conversation of the Testament of Anne Lee.
Mhm.
At the beginning of my opening thoughts for that film, I talked about how there is this prominent theme for 2025. And
Yeah.
we alluded to this when talking about Surah as well. This year has been riddled with movies about grief and motherhood and fatherhood, not just Surah, but of course, Hamnet, Die My Love, The Chronology of Water, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You 28 Years Later, Train Dreams.
Mhm.
All those films deal with childhood grief, parenthood, the challenges of parenthood, trauma as it relates to parenthood and childhood, some version of that.
Mhm.
Of course, the Testament of Anne Lee is a big part of that conversation as well. And we went into all those various reasons in that review. However, in that conversation, aside from Surat, which came to mind as we talked about that earlier,
Yeah.
there was one other movie that I forgot to add to the list. And I think the
Hmm.
reason it didn't come to mind immediately is because I'm not quite as high on the movie overall as I am those aforementioned movies.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
There's one movie that came to mind, but this is the best part of it. At least for me. Now, given what the social media discourse is, a lot of people will very much, very adamantly disagree with me on this, and that is perfectly fine. But for me, this is the best part of the film.
Oh no, I
I
know
am,
where
of
you're going
course,
with this.
talking about Avatar Fire and Ash. I
Okay,
am talking about
interesting.
Neytiri. That's who I'm talking about. Now, obviously, so
Really?
much of her arc in that film is grieving the death of her son, as we saw in The Way of Water. Same with Jake Sully as well. So,
Yeah.
throughout a lot of that film, she is cold, emotionless, distant. There's also that great moment, good honorable mention for me here as well, when she even admits and hates that she has to admit this, that even her own kids sometimes remind me of why she doesn't like humans.
Hmm.
And she has to grapple with this. And I just find that trajectory in the film incredible, that her grief had gone so far as to maybe put a gap between her and the rest of her kids. Now, as the
Hmm.
film goes, it does a great job of removing that gap a little bit. And we do see that obviously she still loves her kids and
Yeah.
she loves Jake. And but that is a big, big through line in the film. And the reason she comes around is because my boy, Jake Sully, played by the great Sam Worthington. And I love that I get to say that phrase now.
This man's gonna win an Oscar soon. I know
I
it.
have come around on Sam Worthington so much. Every time that name gets brought up on social media, I get giddy. I get excited. I get emotional. I have really come to love him a lot as this character.
Mm.
And he goes full Genesis 22 in this film. And that is my number 10 pick here. When he
Okay.
goes
Okay.
full Abraham in this film, I find it incredible. And I think what's great about this sequence is that there's a bit of an old school filmmaking approach to it, despite despite the fact that it takes place in this fictional world of Pandora, where James Cameron has spent his entire life building specific technology to bring it to life. And over the course of the last few years with The Way of Water, now Fire and Ash, a visual masterpiece. Stunning, immersive experience from a visual perspective. But what I love about Goat Cameron is that from a storytelling perspective, he's actually quite old school. He is never going to win an Oscar for screenwriting.
He's never going to get nominated for a writing
No.
Oscar.
Never.
I mean, look at how
Never.
successful Titanic was as an Oscar winner, and that movie wasn't even nominated for best screenplay.
No.
Like,
His movies are not made to win Oscars from a writing perspective. He keeps things fairly, I don't want to say simple, but he's not afraid to live in the world of convention. He loves it. He embraces it. There are certain tropes that he just clings to that are actually strengths because of how they lean into the spectacle, how they lean into emotion.
He likes the familiar, and his goal is to make that familiar look new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And feel new, even though they're not. And that's what I love about The Way of Water. When you break down The Way of Water from a writing, plotting perspective, meh. Like, that's not why that film is great.
Although I
great
will say it actually is maybe one of the strongest scripts to a James Cameron movie.
Oh, and I agree with that.
Yeah,
and like, I'm not trying to downplay the writing because I actually love the writing. But again, I'm not nominating that screenplay for an Oscar.
Fair.
You know, like there's a lot of tropiness to it. There's a lot of conventionality to it. But again, it's how he uses that to his advantage to tell a thrilling story, to tell an emotional story. And he does take a few risks that perhaps subvert convention and traditionalism in that film. And again, that's why he's Goat Cameron. What I love about this moment with Jake, and the reason I say all of that is because we know that nothing is going to happen to Spider. We know that.
Yeah.
The overall story, where we know where all of this is going, Spider is going to be a big part of this series moving forward. He has already planted the seeds. Everything that we see between Spider and Quaritch, and of course everything we see with the Sully family, he's not going to die in this film. We know that, but despite that, there's still that old school filmmaking trick of making you forget that for a moment, because the emotion and what it means for these characters is so strong that it still has this heart-pounding thrill to it. And we have seen Goat Cameron, to be fair to him, he has shown throughout the previous two movies that he's not afraid to kill characters. And he uses that to his advantage here. Yeah. Even though we probably know nothing's going to happen to Spider, we have seen major characters die.
It doesn't make, you might not be 100% sure.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
might, maybe more
98% sure. But there's still that small sliver of doubt that maybe, but probably not.
Maybe something's about to happen.
But he uses that to his advantage. And Jake having that great moment with Spider, where Spider realizes that, okay, this has to happen. He just accepts that this is his fate. Jake brings the knife back. And again, I just love that old school filmmaking approach. I do think it's really, really effective in this moment, especially because what he's doing there is he's going full Abraham. He is having to test Neytiri. And the only way to do that is to make it look real, that I'm going to have to kill him.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't stop me, well, then I guess this is the end of Spider. Just like with Abraham. Abraham was going to kill his son. The knife had been drawn.
Yeah.
And he's about to come down, and that's when God goes, okay, you were going to do it. I believe you. That's the end of this. And that is verbatim what happens here. And then when Neytiri realizes what is about to take place, and her compassion, her motherhood instincts kick in, and she goes back into the woods. And I deeply love that moment. I love what it means for Jake. I love what it means for Neytiri and her grief, because there is a pivot point. She does change throughout the rest of this film as a result of that moment. And I deeply love it. To me, it's easily the best scene in that film. And again, I know people will yell and scream at me because
that's a good scene
in this film, but
yeah, that's a really good scene. It's the scene that reminds me. Yeah, it's the scene that reminds me the most of why The Way of Water works so well.
Exactly,
it shares a lot of the complexities of that movie.
Exactly, and I think because I love that film so much, and I love Jake, and I love Neytiri, and I love those performances, that those were the characters I was still the most drawn to here. And that's not to like Quaritch, badass, love him. Stephen Lang, he's incredible. I love him in these films as well. And Una Chaplin is really great as Ferrang. I love her as well. I think that's a great introduction for that character. I don't know if I'm overly horny for her as everyone else.
Well, the character's incomplete. Yeah, it's an underwritten character at this point.
It's underwritten character, but yes, she also has that badass vibe to her.
Yeah,
a lot to like about the film in that regard. But for me, especially when we're talking about James Cameron peak emotional filmmaking, which is where he thrives, that's the Genesis 22 scene in this film. That's when this film is at its best, I think.
I didn't see this coming for your top 10, but I knew how much you liked this scene, so I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. And it is the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
And just continue. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but not only do I love it on its own terms in a vacuum, I think ultimately it lands on this list for me at number 10 because of the 2025 thematic undercurrent of it all as well. A mother grieving over the loss of a child and how that affects every decision that she makes here. I don't know why we saw that so much in this calendar year,
either.
But
who was running Hollywood this year?
God, they got look. Cameron can keep it going. That's fine because he's got Cameron. But generally, I need everyone else to stop. 2026 better be about gummy bears and unicorns and rainbows. Okay.
And Steven Spielberg making another Alien movie.
Yeah, and Spielberg
And
making
Spielberg
an
Aliens,
alien.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I did it right. All joking
It's a very
aside,
good scene.
I do
Yeah,
love
it's a
this
great
scene a
scene.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a film I don't love that much, but I do love this scene.
Mhm. All
But
right,
I
that is
do
my
think
number 10.
I will say that will keep to the theme with at least maybe one or two of the films on my list. I won't say what they are yet, but sometimes you have to look past what just your favorite movies of the year are to pick your favorite scenes, because sometimes there might be at least one movie that you know is not going to crack your top 20 that may have a particular scene that still ranks as one of the best scenes of the year.
Mhm.
So I assume Avatar Fire and Ash is not going to be among maybe even your top 30 of the year. But
Mm-mm.
the fact that you at least still chose to highlight a scene from it because the scene itself is that good, I think that's respectful. And I think that
Yeah.
showcases that, we're willing to
Mhm.
look beyond just what the best of the year are.
Yeah. And the scene that I had at number 10 earlier today before I replaced it, also not in my top 30. And maybe I
Interesting.
can reveal that at the end here. We'll do more honorable mentions on the next show, but maybe I'll
Yeah, we
reveal
could save that for later.
that one here at the end. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you get really great scenes in films that aren't among your top best.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, number 9. What do you got at number 9?
Number 9, I think I'll spend very little time on this one for a few reasons. I feel like this scene is maybe the universal favorite among many critics as the best scene of the year, and I have a hunch you're going to talk about it at some point, whether it be today or on the next part 2 episode for scenes of the year. But I'm going to go with the one take sequence from Sinners for my number 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
The song I Lied to You, performed by
Yeah.
Miles Catton, who in that scene is playing the great Sammy Moore. As a musician, as someone that truly appreciates the evolution, the musical evolution and influence of music, I love the way that this sequence represents that. This is why I think I would argue that of all things, Sinners is primarily a movie about blues music and the influence of blues music. I think it is primarily that. And when you see it as that, I think as a historical piece about that and how the whole vampire stuff is acting more as a metaphor for the relationship people had to that music at the time, I think it's a more effective movie because of it. And this scene showcases the power of that particular music in a sequence that is just simply beautifully shot. Cinematographer Autumn Durand Archipel, I believe her name is. Just the staging of it is quite impeccable. And Ryan Coogler is someone that has a bit of a trademark in all of his movies. You notice that each one of his directorial efforts has at least one pivotal one-take sequence, right? They all have it in some way. Black Panther had it. Creed had it. This movie now has it. This is probably his most emotionally captivating one, at least it is for me, given the musicality that I thrive in and the music that I love to play. So for all of those reasons, just the overarching influence and history that's represented on screen in a sequence that is probably like 4 or 5 minutes long. It's honestly insane how they pulled this off. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this one more, but I do think it's one of the best scenes of the year.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Certainly one of the scenes of the year.
Yeah.
I agree. Good stuff.
Cheers.
My number 9, I'm going to a filmmaker that I deeply love. I'm going to a film that I deeply love. It is Jafar Panahi's It Was Just an Accident. And maybe I could go with that final shot, but this is maybe me shoehorning in. It's not quite the end. It's close to the end, though.
But it's kind of the thing that makes the end so powerful, right?
Exactly. And it's the scene prior to that final shot, which is so incredible. But I am going with what I'll dub confronting the abuser scene that takes place there at night with Vahid and Shiva. I will also say this. I probably should have said this up front, and this applies to next week as well. Because we are talking about our best scenes of the year, and many of them take place at the midway point or later in those films, we are going to be talking about spoilers for a lot of these scenes. So just
that is a great
warning.
point. How did we not say that earlier? That's
I don't know.
Huge,
I typically
that's a huge miss on us.
I typically do lay that out up front. I for some reason missed that. But
Oh, I
yes,
forgot to say it too. We're both at fault there, man.
spoiler alert for the rest of this conversation and also for the top 5 next week as well. And this takes place right before we get to the final scene. So again, spoilers here for It Was Just an Accident. But I love this film because in a lot of ways, it is the movie of the year. And it's certainly the movie for Jafar Panahi. If you know anything about his career, he's been arrested several different times. He was banned from making movies for a decade or so. And while that didn't stop him, it clearly was something that has been bubbling with him for quite some time. And here is a movie where these characters, who we come to find out were tortured when they were in prison, which he is familiar with, and the oppression that they experienced, they find the person that is the culprit for their torture. They find him, and they have a choice to make. Do we kill him? Do we bury him in the desert? Do we get our vengeance? What do we do with this guy? That is at the core of this film. And eventually it gets to a moment where they take him outside. It is at night in the desert, and Vahid and Shiva, they do confront him, and they pose these questions. They try to get some clarity on it. And you can just feel the catharsis pouring out of Jafar Panahi in this moment. As far as his own career, the persecution that he has experienced. And I think what's also funny is that he's in the United States right now doing a lot of media for this film, and it's likely going to end up Oscar nominated. So he's going to go to LA and he's going to be at the Oscars. And I am so excited for him, regardless of whether he wins or not. But the irony is, and he's already stated that once all of that is done, he's going back to Iran knowing that he's going to be arrested again.
Yeah.
Going to be put back into prison again.
What a brave man. What a brave man.
Very, very much so. And with this film, he's wrestling with those moral convictions. What it would be like to face those that are persecuting you. How do you react in that moment? And with Vahid and Shiva, you can see them struggling. And I think what's fascinating about the moment is the ambiguity of it, because they do kidnap a man. That is very objective of the moment. And there is some physical abuse, and there's a lot of yelling and a lot of purging of their emotions. But what I love about the film is that the two characters ultimately, they don't indulge in violence. They don't reciprocate it, even though there was violence put onto them when they were in prison. And I just love that Panahi is exploring that middle ground.
Sure.
The idea that moral convictions are not black and white. It might look that way on paper, but in practice, it's much more real and nuanced. And that is ultimately what is happening there in that moment. And it is deeply emotional to watch.
Yeah.
And I just love the personal catharsis it is for Jafar Panahi, a filmmaker that I have followed for a long time, that I love. I've seen most, if not all, of his movies. He's certainly one of my guys. And to see him have the success he's had this year with a film that is his most personal to this date is just something that I cannot get over. And this moment in the desert is certainly quintessential of what makes him such a rich filmmaker.
Yeah. What I love about this scene too is that, and I think we talked about this when we reviewed the movie, I am so glad that Jafar Panahi made it when he did, and he didn't make it too early when maybe some of these more vengeful thoughts were fresher on his mind. This is kind of similar to someone like Martin Scorsese waiting the right time to make a movie like Silence, right?
Mhm.
And I think we made that comparison when we reviewed if it was just an accident, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the scene is so crucial and important because it relishes in that gray area, that
Mhm.
achieving such acts of violence as vengeance doesn't really get you anywhere. Maybe it
Yeah.
doesn't. Maybe it's a brief form of catharsis. And I'm glad that Panahi made the movie when he did to add some nuance to that conversation.
Yeah.
Admittedly, the final scene, that final shot, and that sound effect that you hear was probably my number 11 on this list, but I think you're right in that that scene mostly works, if not only works, because of this moment that you're talking about. They're all
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
So in many ways, the final 20 minutes or so kind of acts as my
Yeah.
number 11 for this entire exercise.
Mhm. And I love the parallels to what's happening here in the United States too. There's such a big difference between moral conviction on paper and how that manifests in the real world.
Hmm.
And we saw that this year. Not
Yeah.
to get too political, I don't want to get bogged down in US politics here, but when you look at something like the Charlie Cook assassination, for example, that happens because of emotion and vengeance taking over,
Yeah.
instead of letting that marinate over years and years and
Hmm.
years.
Yep.
And what Jafar Panahi is doing here, like you said, he's making this at the right time because in his earlier days, this might have been more vengeful. It might have
Yeah.
been more violent. He might not have
Yeah.
reacted with the same level of nuance that we see at the end of this film. And maybe it says something about maturity. Maybe it just says something about how he personally has wrestled with this over time. I'm sure it's different from person to person, but it certainly
Sure.
says something about why we see these acts of violence in our
Yeah.
lives all the time. And certainly not
Yeah.
just here in the United States, but all over the world.
Absolutely.
And
It's universal. Very universal.
it's very universal, but
Yeah.
certainly it's close to home given what we've seen this year as well. And
Absolutely.
I just find all of that fascinating here. So yeah,
Absolutely.
my
I
number
agree.
9. All right, number 8. What do you got at number 8?
Number 8. So, for a little bit of context, once again, for my number 9, I had Sinners, and that was the one take sequence from Sinners. I'm going from one take sequence to another one take sequence. Now, for my number 8, I'm going to the film Sentimental Value from Joachim Trier.
Nice.
This is one of the final scenes of a movie that I'm going to be talking about. This is the final one take sequence, the film that Gustav Borg is ultimately directing, and JD's raising his hand for those who are watching on YouTube, which
Yep.
means that JD and I have some crossover here.
This is also my number 8.
Perfect. Let's talk about it together, man.
I love when this happens, and it
Me
happens
too.
way more often than it should.
I mean, we often have a lot of crossover, but I love when it's the same
The
placement on
same
our
number,
list.
yeah.
That just
Yeah.
it allows us to save time. I love that.
It really does. Just it's so funny how this happens from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll get things started, and you can springboard off of what I'm about to say here.
Yeah.
I first off, I love when a movie like this comes around that features a one take sequence, and it's not flashy for the sake of just having a one take sequence. In a way, this is a movie that's about, or at least this scene is about telegraphing a one take sequence more so than actually executing it. Because
Uh-huh.
earlier in the film, we get a very clear monologue that the film that Gustav Borg, played by Stellan Skarsgård, is making will have a one take sequence in it, and he describes it verbatim to the Rachel Kemp character played by Elle Fanning.
Yeah.
So we as the audience know what to expect when he is about to shoot that scene. So when he does at the end, and then we notice where it slightly deviates from his original plan, that's what makes it so powerful. And the fact that this performance, this character that he is shooting for his movie is no longer being played by Rachel Kemp. It's being played by his daughter, Nora Berg, played by Renata Reinsva. And the reasons for that and why it adds new context to how he chooses to change the narrative of what he's shooting. I love that this is a movie that's not utilizing the one take sequence as a mere tactic just to say, I'm a director and look what I can do. It actually has an almost deconstructionistic personality to it. And the way that Nora and her father, Gustav, share glances at each other that then reflects this idea of how Some people can only communicate with your family based on shared interests in art specifically, and that's really
Mhm.
what you have. I think that's very powerful. I really
Yeah.
do. I think that's quite beautiful with how this movie examines that in a way that is technical, but in a way that's also calling attention as to why it's technical. So I love a sequence like this that can do that. So that's why I
Mhm.
love it. Let's hear why you love it.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I think Sentiment of Value is a masterclass in storytelling, and what we see in this film is Gustav wanting to essentially create his Fablemans. That's
Mhm.
how I described it when we reviewed it here on the show. He's wanting to make this film that is close to him and his upbringing as a means of healing. And as the film unfolds, we do come to see much about his childhood and how
Mhm.
that has informed a lot of his emotional baggage, which then reinforces the volatility in his daughters, in Nora and Agnes.
Yeah.
And it leads to this catharsis again through art that we see at the end of the film when he begins to make his movie and in particular recreate that one take sequence as you just noted. And because it's so personal, it was something that was always meant for Nora to do.
Yeah.
Of course, throughout the film, she didn't want to do it. He had to talk to another actress, enter Elle Fanning into the film, and everything that we see there, which is great on its own. But it could only be played by one actress. And he knew
Mhm.
that. Gustav knew that. And I
Yeah.
do love how at the end of this film, we do get the one take shot as you're talking about. And you hear him yell cunt. And the two, Nora and Gustav, they do communicate in that final moment without
Yeah.
ever opening their
Yeah. It's
mouths.
unspoken reconciliation.
And it's astonishing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible how they're able to express that reconciliation through art. It
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's exactly what makes art and film so provocative and moving to me. It's what makes it so profound and emotionally stirring. And I think it's great. And especially when you couple it with Agnes's son also being involved in that sequence. Because for Agnes, so much of her pushback with her father stems from the fact that she was actually a child star in one of his movies when he was younger. And
Right.
it was the best time of her life. That's one of the best scenes of this film as well. A great honorable mention when she's talking about how
There are a
she
lot of
loved it,
great
but
scenes
then
in this
but
movie.
then he
Yeah.
left and it left her broken.
Mhm.
And so the two of them, the two daughters here, Nora and Agnes, in different ways, they have a strained relationship with Gustav, and it all comes back to art and film in this fascinating way. So the fact that all of them together, even though Agnes isn't on camera herself, but her son is, and he's young, he's a child actor here, much like she was for him as well. So it comes full circle in that regard. And it's why I thought a lot of, weirdly, I know this is a weird comparison, but I thought a lot about Warrior with this movie, given how you
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
father figure bringing two siblings together. And that is exactly what's happening here. You have this father figure bringing two siblings together in ways that they wouldn't have without him pursuing this project.
Mhm.
And it just becomes quintessential art as a healer. And I just deeply, deeply love it. It's so fascinating. And again, I love the performative stillness of it. The you know that
Yeah.
that shot of Gustav and Nora simply acknowledging each other without ever saying anything, like it really did a number on me. And it's why
Yeah.
I tend to gravitate toward subtlety more than the bombastic moments.
Well,
I love a
yeah.
good loud moment as well, but generally I feel like there's more power in subtlety, and
Well,
this
yeah.
is very much that.
Because the lack of immediacy of it allows you to find some new nuances each time you revisit it.
Yeah.
And I did try to watch this scene again, and while I knew what I was getting into and I got what I was expecting, I also still sensed a few new things about it. The fact that it wasn't as obvious and literal, I think, is why there's so much to mine from that simple gesture. And I
Yeah.
love when performances and movies can tap into that specific thing. So,
Yeah.
great movie, absolutely great movie.
Yeah.
Joachim Trier, really good at his job.
Good stuff. Yeah. So my number 8 as well, it turns out. That's really funny.
All right, we can
Okay,
speed through
so
this.
on to on to number 7. What do you got at number
All right.
7?
My number 7 is probably one of the films from this year that I did really love that I also don't have any interest in watching again, but this particular scene I am not going to forget anytime soon, and this is from Mary Bronstein's If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. One of the most uncomfortable experiences of the year, but weirdly, the one scene from the movie that just keeps standing out for me is also maybe the funniest scene of the movie simultaneously. That's the hamster scene.
Okay.
And the
Wow.
reason why, first off, the reason why is because I just can't say I've ever seen anything like this. And when a movie can have me saying that, that means it is doing something very right. At
Yeah.
least just the sheer execution of how this particular scene captures anxiety and nerves and someone just at the end of their rope, given what her circumstances are.
Yeah.
I think this particular moment maybe captures that idea maybe most effectively in a film that is all about that specific thing, and the whole film is doing that very well too. But why this scene worked for me so well, it's weirdly the one shot of when the hamster gets loose in that fender bender that she gets in
Yeah.
and runs into traffic and clearly gets run over and demolished, and it's a pretty
Uh-huh.
bloody and graphic scene.
Yeah.
There's a brief moment where you can clearly tell that is a fake animatronic hamster, right?
Yeah.
Like Mary Bronstein is not hiding that,
Yeah.
and
I think
it
she
is
said it was
the.
a puppet.
But even
Yeah.
so, like you can tell it's not real,
Yeah.
and
Oh, for
she is.
sure. Yeah.
But it adds a sense of humor to the scene. But the more I thought about it, and I don't know if this was intentional, I would have to listen to maybe a few more interviews from Bronstein to hear what she has to say about this particular scene and the movie at large. But it also plays into something that we talked about a lot during our review of the movie, and that's kind of this distortion of reality from Rose Byrne's perspective, the character she plays of
Uh-huh.
Linda. I was blanking on her name for a second. And I talked about how there's an argument to be made that she actually is quite the unreliable narrator, that
Yeah.
given her circumstances, she's maybe distorting or creating a reality that isn't necessarily real. It's her reality, it's her facade of sorts that everyone's out to get her because she feels so unnerved that she's basically turning it into that. So the fact that we get a clear shot of what is not a real hamster, I think actually adds validity to that argument that maybe
Sure.
there is some type of facade happening here from her perspective. And I didn't really think of it in that way. I was just more enamored by the choice to showcase how fake that thing looked, and it
Yeah.
added a weird, quirky, horrific kind of twisted mentality to this movie. But I actually think there's some thematic nuance and purpose to it. It's I've never seen a movie very deliberately showcase its animatronic imperfections and actually use it wisely.
Yeah.
That is really intriguing, and that's why the scene is one of my favorite scenes of the year.
Yeah, it's a great film. And you make a great point. It is fascinating that so much of her perspective isn't just unreliable, but it's almost as if she's living in another world altogether.
Yeah.
And that's certainly indicative of how she sees her apartment when she goes over there and looks into the void, and it
Mhm.
becomes almost alien like in a way,
Yeah.
almost supernatural. So the fact that this hamster would carry that same tone in a sense that it feels like it's from another world, I do think that actually complements so much of the psychology that we
I think
see
it
in that
does.
film. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never uttered those words before. A fake
Yeah.
hamster is actually really smart.
Yeah. Good stuff. Love that a lot. All right, I'm going to a film that I know that you love. And in fact, this scene might actually be on your list somewhere. I don't know. But I'm going to the world of Marty Supreme. And
Okay.
I'm going with the final match that we see near the end of the film. And I think what's brilliant about this scene, and look, I understand that this scene is actually quite polarizing. There's been a lot of discourse recently around this scene. But
I have thoughts.
I feel the need to defend it, which is partially why it is here. But also, I think it is the best scene the best scene of the film, because it also leads to one of the more potent endings that we got throughout the year as well. But as we talked about in our review that we had last week with Jay Ledbetter, so much of that ending I do think is earned because of what happens in Japan with Marty and this final match that we do see. Now, I guess to add a little bit of pretext to it, it's important to note that, yes, much of the film, Marty is self-serving. Of course, everyone will admit that. We all know and understand that Marty is this self-centered hero. That's how he sees himself.
He's a brat.
He's a brat. Very much a brat. But all of that is born out of this pursuit of greatness. I believe we talked about that line when Kay asked him, well, what if you fail? And he says, it doesn't enter my consciousness, which is a great line to put on a t-shirt. And it is a great moment in this film because
Did you
of
just
Chalamet's
discover a
performance.
new t-shirt idea?
I don't know. Perhaps I can toy with that a little bit, but I think there's some promise there. It is a great moment in this film. And that's exactly what makes the film so riveting to watch, because Marty just acts instinctively on that boldness. And Safdie, as a filmmaker, God bless him, he's incredible here. He just lets all of that unfold until we see some sort of ramification to his extreme choices. And because he's so manic and impulsive, he doesn't notice or care about how he's losing or affecting his relationships. And I love that the film doesn't really linger on that as much as it's just there for us to denote. And because there's no moment of catharsis, at least for most of the film, you do sense Marty becoming more and more unreachable, which makes for an incredible duality, because his obsession does lead to this competitive catharsis that we see at the end of the film. And the only reason, and this is the big difference, this is the reason I think it's earned, and maybe this is getting lost in the conversation, or maybe people just aren't feeling it as much as we are. I don't know. But for me, I think it's really important to understand that the only reason Marty gets to Japan in the first place is because he is forced into humility. He's forced into humility.
Yeah.
And I think that scene with, what is the character's name?
Oh, played by Kevin O'Leary?
Milton Rockwell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene with Milton at that party or at the theater, I can't remember where it takes place, but we see Marty begging for a ride to Japan. Yeah. And Milton gives it to him under one condition, that he drops trow, bends over, and they spank the shit out of him in front of everybody there.
Yeah,
and
with a paddle.
Marty, in his pursuit of greatness, is forced into humility. And then when he gets to Japan, he can't even participate in the competition. So he humbles himself with Milton, gets to Japan, can't even compete. And by the way, you're a show pony. You're going to be on stage with Endo, and you're going to become the fool. And he's going to do his tricks, and we're going to take some pictures, and we're going to have some fun. And he decides to take it upon himself. And again, maybe you can you can't excuse this as self-serving, and it is a little bit self-serving. He wants to have this match with Endo, but again, it's
But
important to
it's
note
not just for himself.
it's not just for himself, and also it doesn't count. It
Yeah.
doesn't count. This match, win or lose, it's not on the record books. So even if he wins, and spoiler alert, he does win, nobody cares. Nobody's going to know. It's not going to be in the papers. It's not part of the official competition. Marty goes home knowing that he was able to compete at the highest levels. And the only reason that matters to him is because he had to humble himself to get to that point, to have that epiphany, to have that realization. So despite how self-centered he is throughout a lot of this film, I do think that humility changes him in those final moments. And it reverses his psychology in a way which gives credence to that hospital scene. And there's a little bit more going on in that hospital scene that also gives more weight to that final moment. With when he arrives, he admits that he's the father, admits that he's a part of this, and all of that.
Yeah.
Like that admission itself, I think is evidence of how he was humbled. Now, on the other side of fatherhood, could he regain some of that ego? Maybe, but at that moment in time, that humility did change his perspective.
I don't want to talk too much about this, primarily because I may have more to say about it on next week's show. But I will say this. The whole discourse around whether he is redeemed or not by the end is completely missing the point. Because this is a man this man has a lot of work to do to earn redemption, right? He is a despicable human being that did a lot of bad things to a lot of bad people, and many of those bad threads are still left unresolved by the end of this movie. But there is a shift in perspective that showcases he wants that redemption, and that's the difference.
And that's the difference. Yeah. And I think, and again, I know there's been some controversy around this, but like when he approaches Endo at the end of the match, I do think it is in genuine earnestness. Like, thank you for letting me have this moment.
Yeah.
It wasn't about beating Endo and look at me, I beat the number one guy in the world.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with that as much as it was about him having a moment and realizing that he can compete. And that's all that he wanted.
Yeah.
And he was grateful. He found a gratefulness that didn't exist prior to being humbled, that wouldn't have ever come without that humility. But he did find that gratefulness. And I do think he meant it sincerely. I hope that you win that competition. And I agree with you. Like, I don't think the film is fully redeeming him at all anyway.
No.
But he is finding a humanity that was not there previously.
Yeah.
And that to me is what gives credence to that emotion at the end of the film.
Yeah. I have more thoughts about that actual ending. Maybe I'll say these thoughts on next week's episode, but there are particular things I feel very tempted to say that I'm trying to hold back on because I don't want to get myself in trouble. Maybe I'll talk to you about it offline. I'll simply say that. Maybe I'll cue you in as to what I'm thinking about and see what you think about. But I don't know if I'll get into those particular specifics when I talk about this scene. So I guess, spoiler alert, this is one of my favorite scenes of the year, but I don't have it in my 6 through 10. I'll talk about it later. But there are things about it that I am really itching to discuss, but I'm trying to find the best way to articulate it that doesn't get me in trouble. I'll simply say that.
Okay. There we go. I love it though. I think that final match is great. The ping pong itself is also quite riveting. There's that element to the scene.
It's a great action scene. Yeah.
It's a great little action scene, but mostly I just love it for Marty, this perspective shift, the humility that he is forced into, but ultimately embraces, and kind of twists on his head in a way to give himself some closure. Because again, I think there's a world when he goes back where ping pong isn't that important to him afterwards. I mean, I'm sure he goes out and plays and maybe he hustles a little bit, but he may never play high level ping pong ever again.
Yeah.
Like, I think that exists for Marty after
Yeah.
he gets back to the States.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. I deeply love it. I think all that emotion is well earned. It is my number 7.
It's good
All right.
stuff.
Number 6, these are our final picks for this episode. We'll do our top 5 next week. So at number 6, Brendan, what do you got there?
My number 6 is a film that I don't think is even going to make my top 20 of the year. So this is one that I had to look back on. But there's one particular scene from this movie that I think many people would agree is actually one of the best scenes of the year. And it is another final scene from a movie. And I'm simply going to call this Aunt Gladys Gets Her Comeuppance.
Okay, yeah, this is a great moment. This is a very good honorable mention for me.
Yeah, this is clearly the final scene from Zach Krager's Weapons, the horror film from earlier this year. A film I did like, and there are elements of the movie that still linger for me. But as a movie, I'm not fully in love with how it ties these things together. I think it is a little sloppy, to be perfectly honest. But I do love the way it depicts catharsis at the end of this movie when all of these kids who have been victimized, or I guess I should say weaponized to a degree, by this particular individual, Aunt Gladys, played by Amy Madigan, in a very good performance that I know a lot of people are talking about. When the spell reverts and puts these kids in control, that they just comedically chase her down this entire neighborhood
really
and
fun.
then rip her apart. It's weirdly cathartic. And what I love about this scene too is that when it crystallizes, it doesn't relish in the catharsis. It actually relishes in pain and sorrow, as if this is not going to solve anything. The voiceover narration seems to suggest that many of these kids actually haven't really gotten back to reality just yet. They haven't even started speaking again, given this experience. And it actually adds a brief moment of recontextualizing the catharsis that we just saw. So in a way, this scene in a vacuum and how it shifts almost instantaneously before the end credits start rolling, I think is kind of clever. And I think that whole sequence then speaks to this overarching idea of childhood trauma as it's related to school incidents specifically. That's very much the clear metaphor at play here. I love the way this ending handles that. I do wish the film as a whole was maybe more seamless in depicting that idea. I do think it gets very messy in how it gets from A to B to C in order to arrive at that point. But I think that overall point and how it's portrayed in a very interesting way at the final minute is really powerful. I love how it's a moment of such catharsis where the audience in the theater is roaring in laughter, they're applauding, and then you sit back and realize, wait, this was actually kind of devastating. Just for children to have to experience that. And I love the way it twists that kind of thing.
Yeah, I do love that duality. It is on the surface quite entertaining to watch. It is. I love the thrill of watching those children chase her down. It's just incredible. You are right though about like how that crystallizes. You think about the aftermath of it and the trauma that those kids experience. There is certainly a level of poignancy to it, and I do love how that scene rides that line and gets to have its cake and eat it too. But yeah, them chasing her down is one of the visuals of the year for me, for sure.
It is. It pains me to say that I'm not fully in love with the movie as a whole because that scene is
more too.
Yeah, like, and I still really like the movie. Maybe this is another one I'll try to give a rewatch to see if there are any hidden things that I just didn't catch on that first go round. Because it is a movie with some of the highest of highs of any movie this year, and some very mediocre bits tying it all together.
Yeah, great stuff. Do really like that a lot. My number 6, we're gonna go to a film we've already talked about, but it is a different scene. Okay. My number 6 is also If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Good stuff.
Let's get a little teary-eyed here for a moment. Let's talk about the ending scene to If I Had Legs.
I figured you'd talk about this one. Yeah.
Yeah. I talked about this quite a bit when we reviewed it here on the show. And I do love how I'm trying to, again, work around, tiptoe around avoiding everything here being final scenes. That's why I went with the match and not the final scene of Marty Supreme, the confronting the abuser, and it was just an accident, not quite the final scene. Both of those might have been close, but technically not the final scene.
Yeah.
However, like sentimental value, if I had legs, I'd kick you. This is the final scene of the film. And what I love about this moment is how it ties back to the overall filmmaking and the tactic we see from Mary Bronstein, in the sense that we never see the daughter throughout any of the movie. We see the back of her as she's laying on the bed, or the side as she's going to sleep. But if she's in the scene, we never see her face. We only see her body as she's following her mom around. It is very much a first person perspective movie in a lot of ways from Linda's perspective. And that is clearly intentional given what we see here at the end of the film, where we do finally see her face as Linda is laying there on the beach, perhaps at the end of her rope, and feeling her most hopelessness. And then we see her face. We see her face. And I was reminded of that moment earlier in the year in Fantastic Four. I talked about this, and it's actually a good honorable mention for me here as well. Because in Fantastic Four, there's that moment at the end when Sue is saved, not by any of her peers or family. She's saved by the child.
Yeah.
And that is very much what's going on here as well. It's Linda laying there on the beach, feeling as if there's nothing really for her to live for except for that face.
Yeah.
And for the timing of it, for us to see that face in that particular moment, and again, evoking that idea that sometimes your children save you, I think is absolutely incredible. Absolutely stunning. And to see Linda's reaction as she's laying there on the beach, to see the face hovering there and see her light up for the very first time in this film, to maybe embrace the idea that there is some hope. We hadn't seen an ounce of that in Linda up until that final moment. And I did find, weirdly, for a film that is somewhat bleak and devastating in tone through most of the film, you do get this ending that is quite antithetical once we see the daughter's face there. And it crushed me. I think it means a lot to see that when you're at your lowest moment. And I think it's quite evocative. I loved it.
And to showcase for our main character that she is finally able to look at what matters, and she's finally able to see what matters.
As if she's been kind of hiding from it or running from it. And at times we do see her literally running from it, right?
Well, that's why I think, in a way, the cinematography for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is kind of like underrated. I don't think we're talking about it nearly enough, because the way it's shot creates this sensation that it's like someone not looking someone in the eye or desperately avoiding eye contact with someone. That's the feeling I get while watching it, which is kind of representative of our main character in Linda, right? So like it is very first person in that regard, without being literally a first person movie in the same way as something like Nickel Boys was, right? But it kind of has a similar sensation without being as obvious with that. That's not easy. I can't imagine that being an easy thing to pull off.
No, not easy at all. But I do think the performance there from Rose Byrne certainly makes that moment work incredibly well. And Bronstein just, again, like, I do love the physical and thematic interworkings there, the mechanics of Linda avoiding the daughter in a lot of ways, because I think of the moment when the daughter is asleep at night and Linda leaves her there alone and runs to the apartment.
Yeah.
to get away for a moment, just to have some free time. Or she goes down to the store to get alcohol, to go drink again away from the apartment. Or there's that scene when she goes to drop her off at that, what is that, that therapy building area where she's also supposed to go in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes, like, she just like she yells at one of the other mothers just to take
Can
the
you
daughter
take
away.
walk with you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, just there's a lot of this film where she's just like, she clearly loves her daughter. We see her putting her to bed at night and feeding her, and there's a couple of endearing moments, but she's equally pawning her off, or trying to get away as much as she can. And
Hmm.
so like, to hide the daughter, given that thematic underbelly, I think is a brilliant filmmaking touch. And then to show her face there for all those reasons, it's incredible. I mean, it's one of the best directed movies of the year,
I would
as far
agree.
as I'm concerned.
I would
Great
agree.
stuff. We'll get to honorable mentions next week, as well as our top 5 scenes of the year. I will just quickly give this away because I had a different number 10, as I noted
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Not a film in my top 30 at the moment, but I do think it's one of the better animated films of the year. I was going to go with K-pop Demon Hunters here, actually. This is a film that slowly I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And I think part of it is just, it is so good as a musical.
Yeah.
It's kind of reminiscent to our conversation on the Testament of Anne Lee, in the sense that I don't think it's a perfect movie, but the execution is so good that
It's so sincere.
especially as a musical, it's really good. And the
Yeah.
moment, like, the song that registers the most to me is what it sounds like that we hear near the end of the film. And I don't know if you've actually listened and paid attention to the lyrics of this song, but they're surprisingly quite biting. They're deeply,
I agree.
deeply moving.
I actually think that's the best song in the movie.
Yeah.
I primarily I know Golden is getting all the recognition because it's the pop hit. It's the immediacy of that
Yeah.
song, and it is certainly more immediately gratifying. But this is what it sounds like, has a profound energy to it. For
Oh
sure.
my gosh, it's so good. Like, I wish that I had time to just go through here and read the lyrics, but there's a lot here as far as, them talking about letting the demons get between them, that they're not here out on their own, that maybe we were cowards, we were liars, but we're dreamers, we're fighters, and if you dive into the fire, I'll be right here by your side. Like,
Yeah.
and the way those lyrics are sung is extremely potent, and emotional. Like, I
agree.
deeply love it. Like, it's by far the best song in that film. As
No,
far as
I
I'm
agree with that.
concerned.
I do agree with you on that as far as it being the best song in that film. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I like it, it really, truly, genuinely is one of my favorite scenes of the year. So I guess I'll have that as like an 11, I guess, in this
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Because again, when I thought about Avatar, I was like, man, that's just too perfect
If
for
it's
what the rest
sticking
of
to
my
you,
list
yeah,
is
I
going
get
to
it.
look
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So I'll once again reiterate that my number 11 was the final scene / final shot from If It Was Just an Accident. So I guess
Yeah.
we'll refrain from going into all of our honorable mentions now, but we'll just simply
Yeah.
say what the one that just missed our respective top
Yeah.
tens were.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was in my 10 as of earlier this afternoon. Let's go ahead and transition as we round out our top 10 scenes of the year. Last week, we talked about our top or our 10 through 6 picks. And this week, we're going to be doing our 5 through 1 picks. So with that said, let's veer into our top 5 scenes of 2025. Brendan, what do you have at number 5?
All right, so my number 5 is a movie that, honestly, I'm kind of surprised I have it this high on this list, but I guess I'm realizing it's one of those movies that has kind of lingered for me. And I know it was really well liked at the time that it came out, but we're not talking about it nearly as much as we were back when it came out. My number 5 scene comes from Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag. And,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and
Good stuff.
specifically, I'm actually talking about the satellite scene. which involves
Oh, okay.
two characters, George and Clarissa, played by Michael Fassbender and Marissa Abella,
Yeah.
respectively, where they are
Yeah.
essentially going off book against MI6 rules to spy on George's wife, played by Kate Blanchett.
Yes.
And this scene is riddled with a lot of tension as to, are these two, this married couple, about to double cross each other? What kind of tension is actually forming here? And
Yeah.
George says something to Clarissa along the lines of, if my wife's in trouble, even at her own making, I will do everything in my power to extricate her, no matter what that means. Do you
Yeah.
understand? And Clarissa, played by Marissa Abella, responds with what might be one of the greatest lines of dialogue I've heard all year. My God, that's so hot.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
again, kind of
Yeah.
proves that it is almost underratedly now one of the best written movies of 2025.
Yeah.
David Koepp's work there is kind of brilliant. And in a way, this scene does something really intriguing with regard to the spy genre, is that there's almost something kind of fetishistic about the way these spies look out for one another, or quote unquote
Yeah.
look out for one another.
Yeah.
There's a lot of James Bond in this movie in a way, because it features a lot of actors that were somehow tied to that franchise, whether it be an actual James Bond, someone who was in a few of the movies, people who may have auditioned for James Bond, someone who's at least rumored to potentially be the next James Bond. And this movie also somehow comments on the sexiness of the Bond formula while also doing something kind of deconstructionistic about it at the same time. And I
Yeah.
feel like it all rolls up into this one scene. So there's something weirdly kind of timely about this scene and how it's playing with genre formula and genre tropes in a way that kind of makes the film a little underrated for me now, because we're not really talking about it nearly as much as we were back when it came out in, what was that, March, April, somewhere around that time frame. But we're talking a lot more now about movies that came out in the tail end of the year, and I get that, rightfully so. These were
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
direct awards players.
Sure.
But I think in a way, this scene kind of proves, I think, that this film is a little bit on the underrated camp in a way. There's something very efficient and tight about this movie, and it has stuck with me. It really has, and this scene's a great example why.
Yep. I love this moment. This is a great honorable mention. I also have written down here the two dinner scenes. I guess one's a fake dinner at the
Oh,
end.
yeah,
Of
the
film.
one at
They
the end.
invite them over for dinner,
I,
but then
and
it
I,
becomes a game.
I love the way that Kate Blanchett reveals, I never told you all the title of the game. Who grabs the gun?
Yeah, it's great.
There are a bunch of
Really
there
love
are
that.
some line drops in this movie that are just they feel like fist in the air moments
Yeah.
in a way.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, the
yeah.
writing here is fantastic, and the performances are extraordinary as well in terms of playing into the mystery and how it all unravels. It's just fantastic. But yeah, that satellite scene is quite remarkable as well. That's certainly one of the nice gems of that moment. I do really love that as well. Great movie, and I've seen that movie pop up in a bunch of top 10, top 20 lists over the last few weeks. So I love that Soderbergh hasn't been forgotten, at least for some of us.
Yeah.
Which I do really love.
Almost had 3 films this year. I guess technically had 3 films, but we haven't seen the Christophers, and I guess that hasn't gone wide yet.
Yeah. So looking forward to that. I love it when Soderbergh can come out with a whole trifecta in a given year.
Mm-hmm.
My number 5, I'm going to lose some people here, and that's perfectly okay. But this is where we get to the hashtag JD Tears moment of the top 10, because I am going with the ending scene to Chloe Zhao's Hamnet.
Okay.
And again, it's just one of those moments I cannot begin to articulate the emotional punch that this was for me on that first, and let's be honest, only watch I will probably ever have of that movie. And I love the recontextualization that we see here. Even if it's invented for the film, I deeply love how those ending moments recontextualize what Hamlet means for William Shakespeare as this means of coping. Because on one hand, he's obviously devastated to lose his son. And to make matters worse, we see that he has become distant from his wife, Anne. So art becomes his only outlet, his only way to articulate all of these complicated emotions that are swirling in him, which is so fascinating because the film doesn't remold Hamlet into something that fits this story. I know there's a lot of debate
Mm-hmm.
on that, but I will die on that hill. On its face, it doesn't seem to reflect the events of Hamlet, but Hamlet being one of Shakespeare's most interpreted plays, I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's easy to see how you could take certain sections of it and apply it to Shakespeare's grief. And this is what makes art so vital in our lives, and especially to the artists who create such vivid emotional art, because there's that scene earlier in the film where William tells Anne that he's still in disbelief, that it's like he's lost, that speaking of Hamlet, that he's lost and that they're searching for him,
Yeah.
but he's just lost and maybe they can find him. That's how, what he more or less what he says there.
Yeah.
We can find him. He's just lost. They don't understand. And Anne mutters something to the effect of, well, he can't have just vanished. So there is this purgatory of sorts with William and Anne, which is what I love about those visuals here and why they're so evocative, because it's indicative of that idea that Hamlet is in some space in between life and death. That's where William is looking for him, and it's where Hamlet is born out of. He won't be able to find him in the real world, but he can find his son in the art, and it becomes so deeply personal to him, which is why, and again, I know there's debate here, but it's why his to be or not to be moment here, I do think is really devastating.
Yeah, I don't
Because
mind that. It's good.
it's not just a cameo. It is William lost in his grief that he considers mimicking Hamlet. And this is important. I feel like this gets lost in the conversation a lot. It is Shakespeare mimicking the character of Hamlet as he stands there on the edge of the cliff. So
Sure.
I do think that purpose is actually quite obvious. I don't understand that specific debate. And it's also, William becoming a character in the play where he gets to have a one-on-one moment with Hamlet, finally getting closure as he gets to say goodbye there on the stage since he wasn't there when it happened. Something that I do think is really poignant on its own terms, but even more provocative given that Anne had no idea that William was writing this tragedy.
Yeah.
She was blindsided by it and almost didn't know how to respond. I absolutely love how in those final scenes, they are both deeply impacted by the art on an individual basis, because Anne also gets to have her own one-on-one interaction with the character of Hamlet, reaching her hand out to the actor there on the stage. But despite their distancing of each other, it also becomes a moment in mutual catharsis. When Anne quietly whispers, "Look at me," and Will turns around, it's just simply gut wrenching there. And then you get that final shot of Hamnet, the son, there again in this purgatory like visual, kind of looking out at his mother and father before he kind of turns away and walks into the darkness there. And it is striking. Like as far as reinterpreting art, and again, I personally don't quite understand the debate around interpretation. I understand that Hamlet, it certainly has a lot of comedy to it. It doesn't on its face feel like it's born out of grief, but I do think there are certainly places where you can make that interpretation. And this film takes that and does something I think quite magical with it in terms of grief and how art can become this coping mechanism. And the last thing I'll say, because I know I'm rambling on kind of long here, and this is where it's going to be hard for me to keep it together.
Oh, JD's gonna JD tier it. I love it.
Yes. I thought about bringing this up at the beginning of the show, but it felt more appropriate to save it for this moment. So I was lucky enough to get the vinyl of the score.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Yes. And I was listening to it. The other day. And the vinyl player we have is on one of our main counters. It's actually by our children's playroom area. And Andrew, my youngest, decided that he wanted to turn it on. Now he doesn't know what vinyl is on the player, but I do because I was listening to it just the other day. And no, I'm not talking about the one score track that we all know for Max Richter. That's a whole nother thing.
That's
I'm
all.
not gonna
Yeah,
get
yeah.
into
Do
right
not
now.
open up the nature of daylight worms.
Yeah, because and let me reiterate too. There's a reason I didn't bring up on the nature of daylight in any of this,
Yeah.
and to why it's great. I did not mention that at all. That track that kind of takes us out is 1/1000th of that whole sequence. To me, it is last on the list as to why it's effective, and not at all indicative of this story anyway, or it has nothing to do with this story.
Mm-hmm.
But since it plays at the end, I thought I would just throw that caveat out there.
Okay.
Anyway, I pick up Andrew. He cranks it. He turns it on, and all he hears is music. All he hears is music. So he is smiling and he's happy and I have him in my arms. I don't know how else to describe this for the audio listeners out there, but I have picked him up. He's in my arms. We are chest to chest, and he is just having fun listening to music. He has no clue what the music is or the context behind it.
Right.
But I do. And it's one of those great original Max Richter tracks from this film. Again, 99% of
which
this
are really good.
score.
They're really good,
which is fantastic. And that you get one of those tracks playing, and of course it's deeply emotional. And Andrew, and I cannot make this up. It sounds like I'm making this up. I promise you I'm not making this up at all. Andrew, he takes his two little hands and wraps his arms around my neck, hugs me for what felt like forever. It might as well have been forever from my perspective of it. And then grabs my face and gives me a kiss.
Oh God.
As this score is playing on the vinyl next to us.
And we never saw JD again.
I might as well have died on the spot. Like I was in heaven. It was just one of those unforgettable. I couldn't have manufactured that moment at all. That was all Andrew. He's the one that wanted to turn it on. He's the one that hugged me. He's the one that kissed me. And now I got Hamnet, the movie, playing in my mind as he's doing this. And of course, I am sobbing.
Yeah, you're never gonna forget that.
Like just.
I'm not saying this is gonna happen for you, but these types of experiences are when new favorite movies come about, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna remember this for the rest of your life.
And it's why I will champion that Max Richter score. One track does not define that score. It's really, really, really good. And it slays me. And I'm grateful to Andrew for reminding me of why.
That's and that whole ending's a good scene. I think it's a good scene. I don't want to get too down the nature of daylight rabbit hole, but it didn't bother me that much in the moment either. Would I have preferred maybe an original track instead of it? Probably. Yeah, I think I would have. But I'm not going to say that particular needle drop it didn't deflate the movie. I'll simply say that for me. And I do think the scene is very effective. I actually had a few from Hamnet in my honorable mentions. One of them being this scene, also the scenes between Hamnet and his twin sister Judith. I thought those scenes were really quite great. Were probably some of my favorite moments of the film as well, because I think Jacoby Juke probably gives the performance of the film for me. I think he is quite terrific, and honestly, the movie kind of falls apart without that type of performance from that child actor really establishing why we need to care about the circumstances that come about involving him. Like he has to establish that.
Yeah, he's phenomenal in that film. I love the performances all around, but he's certainly quite incredible, and a big reason as to why that ending is as devastating as it is. But yeah, I love that theme in general, that idea of using art as a coping mechanism. And honestly, I do kind of love that this film invents something, even if I felt the other way around, like Hamlet doesn't seem like it's born out of grief at all. Like I
Well,
find that provocative. Like
it's
I
kind of
find that
well,
fascinating
I do
anyway.
too, because it's kind of an interesting idea that many forms of art or many forms of narrative, any medium, especially ones that were written hundreds of years ago, do we really know how they started out? Many
No.
of these myths or stories, legends, whatever, the whole point is that they get twisted and morphed
Yeah.
with time.
Yeah, and who's to say that comedy can't be born out of grief too?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times people use comedy as a way of coping with grief. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. We've
Yeah.
seen movies utilize that. I mean, this is a bad example because these movies are nothing alike, but a movie like Is This Thing On is all about using comedy as a coping mechanism for some type of trauma
Yeah.
or grief, right? So,
Yeah.
like that is very much a common psychological reaction to that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and obviously Hamnet isn't suggesting that it's a comedy or that its comedy was born out of grief, but just in general, maybe maybe there is some truth that Hamlet, even the comedic aspects, were born out of him trying
Yeah.
to cope with the death of his
Th-
son. Because we
yeah.
do know there were that part of his life
That
happened. That
happened.
was
That
true.
happened.
So
Whether
he
what
certainly
yeah.
was grappling with.
Yeah. Whether it bled into the making of the play Hamlet at the time, that's still maybe up for some debate, but I love the idea that some of these things can be reinterpreted as far as what
Yeah,
those sources were, because
exactly.
everything happens in that way. Nothing's set in
Exactly.
stone.
And Hamnet is obviously focusing on a few slivers of that play to
Mhm.
touch into the deep grief that they are experiencing.
Right, exactly.
And having a tangible interaction with the character on stage, which is obviously symbolic for their son. And
Yeah,
I find all of that incredible.
I
I
agree.
love it. All right, that's my number 5. Number 4, what do you got at number 4?
Number 4 will be a very quick explanation from me because it was in your 6 through 10, and that is the final match in Japan for
Okay.
Marty Supreme.
Okay.
I sort of alluded to this, right? When you had it at would you have it at number 8, I think it was?
I
7,
had it
8?
at number 7. Yeah.
Okay. I very cryptically said I might talk about it later, which means, of course, I'm going to talk about it later. So here we are. Admittedly, the scene that moved me more is the final shot against the glass, but that scene doesn't really work without the context of this match. And I feel like, as we talked about last week, that's kind of getting lost in the conversation. The discourse seems to suggest that there's something maybe a bit unearned about that quote unquote growth Marty experiences at the very, very end of the movie. But I think a lot of that growth is suggested in this final match. I think there's a humbleness that Marty has to experience and allow himself to experience, something to give into that absolutely foreshadows the arc that we see crystallize at the end of this movie. I do think there's a through line there. And I think that's what makes this match as thrilling as it is. And as great as that monologue from Kevin O'Leary is about vampires, I think that's an incredible line drop. A lot of it and how it foreshadows the crystallization of Marty's arc and what it means for him at the end. There's a through line there. And I think there's something very important about that. I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
wanted to highlight that once again. I do think this movie is, I will say this. I like that there are some different interpretations about what people think of Marty and how the movie ends. But I think to say that there is nothing earned about the way that ends, I'll simply say this. If you are someone that is a parent or is about to become a parent and you do find that the ending is unearned, I at least want to hear from you why. Because I think
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that. But if you don't fall into that category, I'll just simply say, maybe wait until you become a parent. Maybe you might see something a little bit differently about this ending here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously can't speak for everybody, but
Right.
for most of us, becoming a parent changes you. It just
Yeah.
does. And it's often like a light switch. You can't express it, you can't articulate it. It's just something that happens.
Mhm.
And I think that's very indicative of Marty. I think a lot of fathers, a lot of mothers can very much relate with that idea of seeing the child for the very first time, knowing that it's yours, and it
Yeah.
just does something in you that you cannot begin to express.
Yeah.
It is the literal definition of profundity.
Yep.
It is a profound, life-altering experience. Maybe you're not a crier. Maybe you don't get emotional, but you will in that moment. You will in that moment. And there's nothing that can be said. There's no preparation to be had. It's just something that happens. And I think that's a lot of what's at play there with Marty, in addition to the humbling experience of going to Japan, not being able to compete, having that whole interaction with Endo, as we've been talking about. All of that certainly accumulates to that last moment. So the emotion that had been absent in Marty the entire movie, it just pours out there in that one moment. I think there's a ton of credence to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
where
I can
will
understand. I do understand why a lot of people who are not parents, who haven't had that experience, and that's not to say that you can't emotionally respond if you're not a parent. Of course, a lot of people can simply see the humanity there in Marty, which is also why Chalamet's performance is really great. You can just see the performance, understand the mechanics of what's happening, and empathize with him in that moment. So even though you're not a parent, you can certainly respond to it. But
and it all starts with this final match when he gives into that humbleness and basically fights for something for himself, even knowing that maybe this is the last thing I'll ever do in relation to this sport. I will say, for those who maybe didn't find the actual ending of the movie as earned as they would like, I'm at least willing to listen to those arguments. If someone is saying that he is still a selfish jerk, even when he is praising Endo, at saying to him, "You're a great player, I hope you go on to win," that I just don't understand. Like, that's a criticism I do not understand. I feel
don't
like
get it either.
You left to go to the bathroom during that moment. I'm sorry. That's very cynical to say, but that is, I genuinely think that's a misreading of the movie.
Yeah, or people are being purposefully obtuse, which in the age of the internet, that could be a lot of it.
Maybe
people simply wanting to rage bait.
That's so
I do think that's a lot of the social media discourse out there.
It's sad. It's unfortunate, but Anyway, I love that final match. It's my number 4.
I agree. Really love that a lot in my top 10. All right, my number 4, I'm going to a film that's not in my top 10, but I do really like this film a lot, and this scene blew me away. I'm going with the phone call scene and Ryan Johnson's Wake Up Dead Man. Of course.
Pause. It's my number 3.
Well, there you go. Perfect. Okay. So pretty close there. So Brendan has this at number 3, mine number 4. And what I love about this moment is that you have this character of Judd, played wonderfully by Josh O'Connor, who is a man of faith, but he gets caught up in the murder mystery alongside Benoit Blanc. They have to find the source of, they're trying to find the source of information, and they're trying to draw it out of all of these other characters. And, they're struggling. They don't, there's a dead end. They come to a dead end.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, Judd gets this phone call from Luis. Or actually, I think it's vice versa. He calls Luis because he's trying to find out some information because they've hit a dead end.
Yeah.
So let's call her. Let's try to get some information. And that scene is then upended, completely flipped on its head, as Luis then begins to become vulnerable with Judd. Her mom is dying, I believe it is, or has cancer or something to that effect. And she just wants to have a moment of prayer and faithful honesty with Judd. And in a moment, he remembers who he is and what he's trying to do and why he's at this church to begin with. And I would have never have guessed in a million years that Wake Up Dead Man would simply become genuinely one of the best movies about faith that I've seen in the last 10 years. And it is truly, truly remarkable how the film plays out in that regard. We talked about it a lot when we reviewed it on the show, but it very much starts with that phone call scene and Judd pausing and remembering what his role really is, why his faith matters, why he is a changed man. He is not an investigator. He's not Benoit Blanc. He is a minister whose calling is to help people through faith. And here is a woman that is in need of faith, is in need of prayer. And for the film to genuinely walk us through that and take its time doing so, I think is nothing short of extraordinary. Really, really incredible. Did not see that coming. I loved it. I was so blown away by that moment in this film. And my number 4 here.
We have to give a lot of props to Bridget Everett as well, who plays
she's
Louise.
Very, very
she
good.
is terrific. This is the definition, once again, of a great supporting performance because it's supporting this particular sequence. I agree with everything that you said. That's why it's my number 3. I just find it so kind of incredible, honestly, to have a commercial movie like this that at least has the topic of religious faith under its belt and actually showcases it as something that people sometimes need. Because we often see movies about religion, religious faith, even in the realm of Catholicism, where a lot of times it's accurately depicted as a bit of a punching bag, right? Like there's something very corrupt about that. And I don't think that's wrong to depict those movies in that way, but it's become very rare to see the other side of that coin, that there actually can be some valid purpose in how religious faith helps people and why they need it in their lives. And I think that's quite beautiful how it's handled. Rian Johnson's a filmmaker that is very much known for subverting the audience and subverting tropes. That's kind of his shtick, right? That's maybe his number one characteristic, is being very subversive. Sometimes subversive for subversive's sake. He tends to get a little carried away at times. I think that might be maybe my biggest criticism of him. This might be my favorite rug pull that I've ever seen Rian Johnson do.
Yeah.
Because it actually has an emotional purpose to it. I was genuinely shocked when I saw that. It's really quite beautiful. One of the sweetest moments of the year.
Yeah, it's deeply, deeply gorgeous. I very much agree with you there about that scene. Like I said, my number 4, your number 3. So moving on to my number 3, I will admit these next 3 that I'm about to talk about are a little interchangeable. I could swap them out in any order. Okay. I do love them a lot. At number 3, though, I am going with the road scene in One Battle After Another.
Yeah, that's got to be on here. I know.
Yeah, got to be on here. I mean, there are a lot of great moments from this film that you could choose, but I think for a lot of obvious reasons, it's hard not to go with this moment simply because of, one, the cinematography and the use of those long lenses is incredible.
It's inventive. It really is.
It really is innovative in that regard. And again, finding that road, the location scouting, just impeccable. That is incredible how they utilize that natural landscape to create this intense, thrilling moment as these cars are chasing after one another. Mm-hmm. But it's also great because you have this father-daughter dynamic at play, as we see throughout the film, with Leonardo DiCaprio's Bob character trying to find his daughter, clearly in over his head. And I do love that gag throughout the film that he simply doesn't know what he's doing. But he's there. And that's what's great, right? Is that he's there. He just wants to find her. He just wants to keep her safe. And that element of it, I do think, is quite visceral, before you get to the actual chase. And once this film went on digital, I feel like one of the first viral moments that people pulled was him speaking Spanish to the guys there on the corner.
That's a good scene.
As he's trying to get directions as to what they may or may not have seen, so that way he can go into the right direction. And it's just this brilliant little moment of comedy, but it underneath all of that is this bubbling urgency and emotional fortitude in DiCaprio that's really great, because again, this is a father that is desperate at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
and wants to get to his daughter. And Willow, of course, is on the run from these guys that are trying to kill her, as
Mhm.
we see throughout the film. So there's that push and pull as well. There's the initial car accident, her hiding on the side of the road. Bob finally comes down to see her, and that intense exchange where she forces him to deliver the code word. And the film had done such a great job
Yeah.
earlier to set up that he may or may not know what this code word even is, because he had forgotten the code word
Yeah,
through
it's been so
the
long.
most important one throughout most of the film. So, like, that little exchange, I think, is really great as well. And because Willa doesn't know who to trust and not to trust, even though it's her father, and she sees that it's Bob, but she still hesitates. It's just this fascinating little dynamic that I think is just quite powerful. And Paul Thomas Anderson, he's just simply one of the best working today.
He's
And that
good at
moment,
his job.
it's
He's
just
really good.
it's such a perfect movie scene too, because of, again, like how immersive it is, going back to the cinematography and the editing of it all. But it's also just full of great emotion and characters that we are rooting for, characters we are rooting against, and it all just plays perfectly with each other. Like every one
Um,
of those elements are in harmony, and
th-
it's brilliant, utterly
yeah, and
brilliant.
and as you said, there's a lot of emotional drive. No pun intended,
Pun
driving that
intended.
scene.
Yeah,
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 yeah. Actually, there was no pun intended. I just tripped upon that. There are at least 5 scenes from this movie that could be up for debate as being among the best scenes of the year.
yeah.
The one that I almost went with that is an honorable mention of mine is the bank robbery gone wrong in the first third of the movie and the chase
Sure.
scene that comes about that. And I think a lot
Yeah,
of it is
that's a
because
great sequence.
yeah,
Yeah,
Teyana Taylor's performance is my pick for the best performance in the movie. Like everything involving her in that first third is the thing that really sticks out to me the most.
yeah. Really,
And
really great. Yep.
yeah, and the way that that scene uh, functions as sort of like an action scene in a way is really quite thrilling. So that almost made my list, but there are many scenes from this movie that function as great honorable mentions for me.
Yep. Good stuff. Love that movie. Number two. What do you got at number two?
Number 2, I'm going with Clint Bentley's Train Dreams, and I'm going with the ending of this one. Who would have thought that you told me, "Oh, there's gonna be a great biplane sequence in a movie in 2025," and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, Tom Cruise is making Mission Impossible." Nope, it's not that one. It
Yeah.
is a different one. It is, of course, the ending of Train Dreams, where now, I guess, elderly Joel Edgerton, um, let's just say it's an ending that really capitalizes on the idea of what it means to take it all in, right? I describe this movie as uh, like scrolling through an old family photo album where you're going through the memories of what your family history might be, maybe filling in the gaps of what that story is for these particular individuals. You might not know the full story, but you're kind of inferring what some of those things are, only to then realize that whoever these people were, whether it be in your life or not, made some type of physical imprint in the world around them that eventually lead to some type of historical a historical blueprint, right? And that realization for Joel Edgerton in this moment, where everything he may have contributed, and as mundane and small as they may have been, somehow still was a part of shaping the world as it is today.
Yeah.
The way he looks upon how technology has shifted, how things he may have done ultimately ended up becoming futile, only to then ironically realize that was necessary for where the world was ultimately going to go. That futility needed to happen. Uh, how everything he had touched had left some type of physical imprint. The beauty in those simplicities. That's essentially what this movie is about. It's
Yeah.
probably my favorite genre right now, the beauty and the mundane. We always talk about that. And the
Yeah.
acceptance of that beauty in this particular sequence, the cinematography and how it's captured. We just saw that this movie won best cinematography at the Critics'
Yeah. That
Choice
was a
as we're
fun
recording this.
surprise.
Yeah, I didn't really
Yeah.
expect that. That
I
was a
didn't
nice little
either.
surprise there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we're at least remembering the cinematography for this movie. I hope to God we can keep talking about the score from Bryce Dessner as well, because the way the music swells in that final sequence, I think
Really,
also
we
adds
really
to that
hope
beauty.
so. Yeah.
So it's just one of those sequences that made from probably one of my favorite vibes of the entire year. And you know me, JD, I love a good vibe as it pertains to movies. So for those reasons, it is among my scenes of the year. I think it is quite beautiful, and it just left me kind of lingering and thinking
Oh,
as it crystallized. And a great scene ends up doing that for me.
yeah. I deeply love that scene as well. A great honorable mention for me. Might be my number. Well, I guess we talked about R11 last week on the show, but
Number
probably
12
12 or
now.
13.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably my number 12. I really wanted to go with something for Train Dreams as well. I also considered the rain sequence
That was also really
that
good.
takes
Yeah.
place after that major reveal halfway through the film. Any of the scenes with Arn are great honorable mentions here as well.
Hmm.
Love those moments. Really beautiful movie, and I agree with you. Just another impeccable interpretation of magic in the mundane for sure. Deeply
Absolutely.
love it. Yeah,
Best
great,
best
great honorable
best
mention.
best movie genre.
My number two, I'm assuming that this is your number one. When we first started our top five here, and you asked me, are we going to have any crossover? This was the one that I was anticipating.
Okay.
At number two for me, I am going with 28 Years Later. It is the Skull Tower scene that takes place near
Um,
the end of the film.
yep, not on my list. This movie's not on my list.
No?
I'm kidding. Of course, this
Okay.
is my number one.
Okay. I was going to say, I would have been surprised.
I just wanted to see how wide
Yeah.
those eyes of yours can open.
I
when
would
I
have,
said
yeah, I would have been real surprised.
number one is
But
from The Naked Gun.
yeah, well, some good moments there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah, I
imagine if I said
mean,
The Electric State instead. No, of course, my number one is this scene from 28 Years Later.
yeah, I made the mistake of rewatching this while I was at work last week. Oh my God, should have never have done that. Oh
Did
my
did,
God.
did someone walk in on you?
Thank God that did not happen, because if someone walked into my office as that was happening, I would have had a lot of explaining to do.
Sure.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is a really, really moving sequence. And it's interesting, right? Because in order to articulate its power, you really have to go back to Dr. Kelson and talk about what this even is, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so fascinating that in this world that is obviously full of carnage and death, he has spent his whole life lovingly building a relic dedicated to all the lives that were lost. And from an outside perspective, it is a bit bizarre and grotesque,
Sure.
but as we come to see, in contrast to so much of the village sequences in the first half of the film, Kelson actually has a deeper, more intimate relationship with death, one that is founded in remembrance and honor. The
Yeah.
vestige that he builds is full of individuals that deserved to be remembered, that deserved to be grieved, memento mori, if you will. And I do love how Danny Boyle subverts both audience expectation and also Spike's own intentions. It's heartbreaking and
Mhm.
ironic, but also poetic and beautiful, that because of who Dr. Kelson has become, Spike isn't on a mission to find a cure for his mom. Instead, he's leading her to her death. And there's something really special and profoundly moving about how that crystallizes in this film with this skull tower sequence where she dies and he is given her skull to place on the tower as he climbs up there. And you get
Mhm.
that incredible score that's going on there. You would talk about one of the more underrated scores of the
Oh
year.
gosh, yeah.
Underrated everything with this film. It's one of the most underrated movies of the year. Cinematography, editing, the Young Father
Uh,
score,
few
all of it.
performances that we could probably highlight as
Performances,
well. Yeah.
absolutely. But that Young Father's track that plays underneath this, it is striking. It is so, so poignant and wonderful. And you couple that with the visuals that are taking place there. And I've just never seen anything like it on screen before. Again, it is a little grotesque, but gorgeously so.
Mhm.
And just powerful symbolism that I found gut wrenching and
Yeah.
weirdly kind of peaceful. It was a great crystallization too, that story for Spike, and
Uh-huh.
I love it deeply. Deeply love this movie. Love that moment. It is my number two.
I just didn't see it coming when that moment happened. I was genuinely surprised that a 28 blank later movie was going to go in this type of direction and
Yeah,
essentially function as a coming of age film.
yeah,
I was genuinely surprised by that. And I guess I shouldn't have been because I think I went into the movie knowing that Danny Boyle had said the movie Millions was probably his favorite movie that he has directed and how it
yeah,
was kind of an inspiration for making 28 Years Later. I should have guessed that there was going to be
yeah.
some type of childhood element to it
Should
when
have
we got to
known.
that
Yeah,
scene. I love the points that you make about how this movie utilizes the grossness of death in an ironic way and sort of twists it and
yeah,
deconstructs it and
mhm,
deconstructs it for something new because these movies in this genre that the 28 years later movies play within are very gross and bloody movies, and this brings a new lens to what that ultimately means and
yes,
creates probably what I think was one of the great modern movies about what it means for a child to say goodbye to a loved one and learning
yeah,
what that means. And I love the irony that it takes place during a dystopia where people arguably don't have the chance to do that anymore, or perhaps have even forgotten what it means to say goodbye when you're too busy trying to stay alive. I love the way it subverts that type of trope that we normally see in zombie movies specifically to actually showcase the sad beauty underneath the blood and carnage. I that is something I did not expect, and I don't think I can really think of any other movie that has done something like that.
yeah,
And that's why it's my number one because it stands
yeah,
out as one of the most unique and beautiful experiences that honestly I think I've had this decade. It's
yeah.
up there for me. This was a rare treat of a movie for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you. That's why I said my top three here is a little bit interchangeable, and that
Mhm.
moment might as well be a 1B because I very much feel the same way. It's
Yeah.
incredible how subversive it is to that idea of death and a franchise that is full of death and carnage, not just in this
Yeah.
film, but in the entire franchise. And to see this film take that idea and completely flip it on its head as it relates to death and what that means. And, I think that's why
Mhm.
Kelson is just such a fascinating character to begin with because every other character here is about survival. Again, going back to that contrast of the village, they're all
Yeah.
about survival. They're scared of
Yeah.
death. They
Yeah.
leave all of that on the fringes of their society, and Kelson is up close and personal to it,
Yeah.
completely embracing
Yeah.
it. And of course that leads to that great moment with Spike at the end of the film. Really, really incredible stuff. And again, just the theme of 2025 as it relates to grief. And even though so many of these other films have been from the perspective of a parent losing a child or an adult losing a loved one, this is a child losing a mother.
This
But
is yeah,
still,
motherhood especially has been maybe the most prominent example of that theme that you're talking about.
yeah,
So this becomes sort of the other side of that coin. Like this is the
yes,
yin to like if I had legs, I'd kick you's yang, right? In a
yeah.
way, like it's
And it's why the zombie birth scene is a great honorable mention here because that very much plays into that central theme as well, where death is
mhm,
giving birth to life.
yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. All right.
What a
28
movie.
years later. Awesome movie. My number one is a film that you've already talked about, so I don't have to spend too much time on this. I believe this was your number nine, if I remember
I'm
correctly.
guessing you're talking about a little blues music for
A
your
little
number
blues
1.
music. Yes, I'm going to the world of Ryan Coogler's Sinners. It is the I lied to you moment. I just cannot fathom. Like I would have never have seen something like this coming. Maybe I should have because Ryan Coogler is brilliant. But watching it unfold, I felt like I was elevating out of my seat. It was transportive in a way that I've just never really experienced before.
Sure.
Somewhat like what we were just talking about with 28 years later. And I just like in a movie that is incredibly thoughtful and provocative as it explores assimilation and cultural appropriation and the power of music as a way of healing and bringing communities together. I love how blues acts as a cipher here
Yeah.
for those ideas. I find that incredibly poignant given the history of that genre and how it functions as a means of not only expression but connecting spiritually, which, as this film suggests, gives way to both ancestral and malevolent forces.
Hmm.
And it's why the barn burning sequence is so freaking brilliant, because it's this moment of magical realism, this surrealistic dreamscape that fuses past, present, and future generations of music together to tell the history of black music and how one has informed the other along the way. It transcends time and space. It demonstrates the profundity of music. It is deeply soulful and absolutely stunning in terms of the choreography of it all, how it moves, how it breathes. Again, the fire element and how that's at play as well. It's just, again, unlike anything I've seen before
Yeah.
in a film like
Uh,
this. And
yeah.
I was blown away.
This is
Blown away.
this is maybe a cynical side of me admitting something I love about this scene as well, and I didn't talk about this when I had at my number 9 on last week's episode. But one thing I also love about this scene is that it truly separates the casual film lovers from just general audiences that don't really look out for certain things. I won't say who, but I have someone in my life who saw this movie and was, for the most part, enjoying it, but had to stop it during this scene because their explanation was DJs didn't exist at this time. I can't believe this. Why would they do that? And I just laughed and said, you know what? You don't deserve an explanation.
Well, that's the beauty of film language and magical realism. And maybe some people have a hard time putting their heads around that. I think it's
Yeah.
quite obvious that it wasn't playing out practically in that way.
Well,
But,
so, sadly, yeah.
everyone,
Thankfully, this individual was not a family member, so I don't feel
yeah,
bad calling them out in this way. But I couldn't
fair
help
enough.
but laugh. I couldn't help but laugh at that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have too. I think it's quite clear what's going on there, even if all of its nuances aren't cogent the first time that you watch it. But it is
Right.
just, it's nothing short of brilliant how those different variations of generations, how it comes together to inform how it's all connected to these
Hmm.
characters, to the past, present, and future. It's brilliant. And also a shout out to Miles Canton, who also won a Critics' Choice as we are recording tonight for Best Young Actor. He
Yeah.
is incredible as Sammy in this
Yeah.
film, and
I think it's
the
the best
way,
performance in the movie.
man, the way he sings that song and the way he plays the music there, it is just
Yeah,
freaking incredible. It
I
is
agree.
so good.
Yeah,
So yeah, certainly one of the best music moments of the year for sure, and for me, the scene of the year.
I think that's
Um,
fair.
but this and 28 years later, though, are kind of, again, interchangeable, my 1A and 1B respectively. But both of them, for me, it just simply comes down to, not only was I blown away, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, which we often love
Extraordinary
to see.
filmmaking.
We see
Yeah.
so many movies, so it's hard for us to say that.
All right. I know we have a ton of honorable mentions. Let's try to get through this as quickly as
Okay, so
possible. So
let's
what
so
do you
next two
have on
hours,
your
let's
list?
see how far
I
we can
know.
get through these. um,
Yes.
I did mention that if I did have a number 11 on last week's episode, it would have been the ending, the final scene and shot specifically of If It Was Just an Accident.
Mm.
That was almost in my list, but just a few others to quickly round this out. The submarine sequence from The Final Reckoning is very thrilling, regardless of what you think of the movie itself, but I think that's a very well executed action sequence.
Yeah.
The final mirror shot from Steven Soderbergh's Presence, I think, is really quite
Mm.
great. I'll also say from the movie Ethos, when Bill the Spaceman Lee wanders in as this nameless pitcher, really
Okay.
quite
Yeah.
ethereal and almost ghostly in its presentation. The beach scene from the animated film Little Amelie, or the character of Rain, was really beautiful
Yep.
for me.
Okay.
Alex's performance with his wife in the crowd and Is This Thing On, and how that crystallizes on the streets of New York, really quite great as well. The way the plan takes shape in No Other Choice, coupled with Sam and Dave's song Hold On, I'm Coming, I think is really quite great too. The performance scene from the Baltimoreans. There's also the split party scene from Twinless, the final scene from The Shrouds. Jennifer Lawrence jumping through a glass door in Die My Love, one of the best jump scares of the past 20 years.
Sure.
Thunderbolts, the Marvel movie, the group being saved by a group hug. The, the needle drop of firework from Ari Aster's Eddington, the train scene from Highest to Lowest, the snowman love story from The Naked Gun. I'll stop there. There's more we can talk about. I'm sure you have more to talk about there as well, JD, but that's a very small representation of my honorable mentions, at least.
Yeah, totally fair. I'll try to get through these quickly. I noted last week that my number 11 was What It Sounds Like from K-Pop Demon Hunters. I would be remiss, especially since this year has seen the introduction of my son Sam on the show several different times. I know one of his scenes of the year, whether he'll admit this now or not, might be different, because he wants to play it cool. But that boy was obsessed with Your Idol in that film. So I'm going to throw that on here as an honorable mention for his sake. In Resurrection, the con artist sequence, and as I noted earlier, the vampire sequence, that one take shot sequence at the end of the film, both of those are phenomenal. Good honorable mentions here. The art heist in Mastermind, the Mastermind.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
The film Caught by the Tides, I just put the whole movie because I didn't know what to pick. There's a lot happening there. In No Other Choice, the first victim scene. I also considered the costume party scene and the ending to that film as well. In The Secret Agent, there's the confrontation scene that you mentioned last week.
Yeah.
But also that ending coda, I think, is quite extraordinary as well.
Oh, yeah, with the character Fernando, I believe his son's name is. Yeah, beautiful stuff.
In the film Hedda, pretty much all of Hedda's scheming, I just threw on there as one broad honorable mention. The ending to Die My Love, I think, is really great. But I also consider the party sequence / the car ride home afterwards in Die My Love. With Hamnet, the other scene that I really considered here is the birth of Judith. Because so much of that film is about life. That is a movie about life as it is as much death. And I think that scene is quintessential to that.
Yeah.
The ending monologue in Sorry Baby. Also the courtroom catharsis in Sorry Baby. I have it on here. Sinners, Rocky Road to Dublin. Come on. One of the best music moments of the year.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love the tender ending to Frankenstein. And the friendship scene as we get into the second half of the film, I think, is really great in that film as well. The ending scene to Twinless is one that I heavily consider. The hotel scene, also quite moving as also well.
Good. Yeah.
Trunks and Highest to Lowest.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Love that moment. How about Charles' reveal in The Ballad of Wallace Island? I mean.
Yeah, that's good.
So good. Really tender.
Yeah, that's beautiful stuff, man.
The Chris Hansen interview in the documentary Predators.
Okay.
My God, what a moment that is. The ending to Jay Kelly, also the phone call in Jane Kelly, I really like as well. When the dad has to tell his kids what happened in the documentary The Perfect Neighbor.
Wow.
Devastating. Let's see. The Shula father scene in On Becoming a Gunny Fowl very much stood out to me as well. The ending family confrontation at the end of that film is a good honorable mention. The ending to Begonia, wild. I had to throw that on here. I'm with you on Thunderbolts. Facing Your Demons in the Void is a heavy honorable mention for me. Fantastic Four, The Baby Saving Sue. Really love that as well. And Superman, when Pa Kent tells his son that he's proud of him, just awesome dad moments. And I love the ending montage in that film as a result as well.
I'm a punk rocker. Yes, I am.
And the final battle in Predator Badlands, I had to throw on here as well because it's
still need to see that one.
Real good. I'll stop there. Obviously, I could keep going on and on and on, but 2025 ended up being a pretty good year. A lot of great scenes.
Had me worried for a bit, and then it got good.